Human Tech, a podcast about brain science, technology, and the way humans use technology. With me, as always, is Dr. Susan Weinschenk.
Hello.
And I am Guthrie Weinschenk. So today is going to be a bit of a free-flowing, open conversation. We have a topic that is loose and is very interesting, and it's going to take us in a couple different places. So that topic, of course, I don't know, Susan, did you want to talk about it?
Well, the way you introduced it, it's like it's going to be loose and flowing, like the rest of these have been scripted. I thought they were all loose and flowing. No, you mean we don't even know what we're going to say about this topic.
We don't even know what we're going to say yet because this topic is a little metaphysical. It's a little generational.
It's a little... All right, so here's the question. Here's the question I am posing.
Yeah, and we'll back up. We're trying to...
What?
The way we come up with podcast topics is we have a list. We use a program called Asana that's basically just a dashboard, and we have all of our kind of ideas and topics and upcoming events and stuff in Asana. And whenever one of us come up with an interesting question, we go, that would be a good question, and we put it in Asana. So one of the questions that Susan posed to me recently are, why do people want things to be transient these days? It seems like transientness is kind of a hot thing. And for those who don't understand the question, which is what at first I had to get an explanation, something that would be the transient versus non-transient. When you send a text message to someone, that's non-transient because it exists forever. Either on the AT&T servers or on the phone or in the message dialogue, whereas a transient message would be like Snapchat that automatically purges itself after a set amount of time. Is this correct for the most part?
Yeah, although I can never find previous text messages. So to me, they're kind of transient.
Everything's transient to you.
No, but that is the question. It's like I was thinking about Snapchat, and it was like, it seems to be that the part of the appeal of Snapchat, and you can tell me if this is true or not, because you use Snapchat a lot more than I do.
I used Snapchat very regularly, yes.
Yeah. So it seems that part of the appeal is the fact that it disappears.
Absolutely.
And I was like, my question is, does that mean, why would you want it to disappear? Don't you want things you take a picture, you make a video, don't you want it to hang around, and then you can send it to someone else? Like, why is it so appealing? And I guess I had the question, what else? Is this a new trend? Is this just something that we naturally do, and our technology is finally catching up with it? Is this a generational difference?
So
what's the story?
The reason that this was going to be such a free-flowing podcast, and there's a bunch of things I want to cover. You can make a list if you want. First, I want to talk about...
should I get out pen and paper? Is that what you're telling me?
Again, to the audience, the test will be at the 40-minute mark.
Okay. Why? What? What do you mean the test is at the 40-minute mark?
No, that was a joke.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right, I got pen and
that's
paper.
That's a reoccurring joke on this show, apparently, where we tell our audience that there's going to be a test.
Yeah, except I don't get the joke. Well,
okay.
All right, I'm ready. So I got pen and paper.
All right. So the topics that I wanted to cover here.
Yeah.
And the first one's going to be the big one.
Okay.
And that's why this is it's about a perception of the world. It's a religious, metaphysical question.
Really?
Yes, that's why people use Snapchat. I thought
I was just asking a question about Snapchat. All right, perception of the world. Yeah. I'm writing down religious.
I'm very serious about this.
All right, I believe you. We're going to get there. All right, so what else do you want me to write down? I have that written down.
The question is, does that world philosophy hinge on generational thinking? Now, we will
Okay.
probably do a whole nother episode just on the differences between generations. It's very interesting. We actually do a whole talk. We have a presentation we do on the differences in generations and design. So we have a lot of information about that. I don't want to get too much into the differences, but is this a generational thing? That's part 2.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Part 3 is the idea of privacy. Now, obviously, in the tech industry, this is a hot button issue. Just like the others, I don't want to dive too much into it, but I definitely want to bring up the idea, because you asked, what are other transient things? Well, you start thinking about Snapchat, you start thinking about messages, even if they don't automatically delete, that are transient in the way that in the idea that only one person can view the message, right? So like end-to-end encryption, the idea that some company isn't mining my data, that the government isn't searching through my information. The idea that in the future, when I'm running for Congress, all my drunken college photos aren't still on Facebook. So it somewhat hinges on the idea of controlling the online privacy and the online footprint that a person has.
Okay.
Examples, of course, include, and another great example of why this is a hot trend is in Europe, right? They're passing a couple laws that would require Google to have a forget my data button.
Yeah.
Where you press it, and so Google would delete all your search history, all your that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that you have the right to disappear online. So, those are kind of all the topics.
So is that the appeal of the Snapchats disappearing? Is it primarily just that I want to control?
Well, those are the 3 places I want to talk about, and I don't think, and I'm not sure. It may depend on the person. I don't think it's. I don't know if I have enough of a handle to tell you it's, 60, 20, 10 in these proportions or whatever it is. It may vary from person to person, but these are the things I wanted to explore.
All right.
So do you want to start with the metaphysical, philosophical?
Yeah, I think you better, because I have no idea.
French philosophy. So,
yes, go ahead.
Whereas in the previous podcast we actually did English Lit 103, this is going to be philosophy 103.
French philosophers 103.
What is the self?
I have to warn you that
who is the human? What is the human experience?
I don't know a lot about philosophy, and
to whom does the human experience?
Oh my gosh,
matter.
Okay.
Those are the grand questions I'm posing for you. But let me back it up in a different way. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What if human perception is actually the window into a person? The window into the consciousness of a person. And so when that we are transient beings existing through space and time, and that our experiences that we have are what makes us human. The grand idea is that when you share a moment in time with someone, you're sharing something that's deeply human and a deep part of yourself. You're sharing your window into the world with another person. So the kind of huge, the appeal of Snapchat is that it really actually matters because it does disappear. So whereas if you put a Facebook message, it's diluted by the fact that it always exists. It's not human because being human is all about the passage of time, and life is about the degradation of all things. Snapchat, because it...
That's very deep.
It really is. Snapchat, because it only lasts 24 hours. It's just a snippet into a human's life. And so it means more, and it's really like you're sharing a small, this is what I'm doing in this moment. And that's all there is.
But another reason, I understand what you're saying. I do. Although one could say that another maybe it's to that our reptilian brain, what I call the old brain, the part of our brain that's primitive, the most primitive unconscious parts. We don't like losing things, and so we come to value more things that disappear because they disappear.
Potentially, sure.
So it might not be some grand philosophical, this is what it means to be human. It might just be our old brains going, I don't want it to go away. And then therefore, but that is kind of contradictory, right? I don't want it to go away. So then why am I using a technology
exactly
that makes it go away?
And the content is very different too. So when you put something up on Facebook or Instagram is the perfect antithetical example. So when you take a picture on Instagram, a lot of people, and again, always exceptions to the rule, but for most people, what they take on Instagram is a very filtered version of their life. They only put pictures of them when they look good, when they have a smile, they're posing.
They plate the food, just
the
perfectly.
lighting, and comments on Facebook. They're thought up, they're written down, they're pre-processed. On Snapchat, right? It's like, because the only way to do it is just by holding your phone, the Snapchats you get are of these small, insignificant snippets. Like, here's a video of my leg, and there's like a piece of lint on my leg, and I flick the lint off.
Seriously?
Yeah. Or just like, I'm making food, and here's like a Snapchat of me stirring a pot. And of course some people snap, more, I would say, Instagrammable moments, right? Where, everyone's taking shots and, so you kind of record that fun moment. That's a staged moment. But it's much more just these little, like a picture of me just like sitting, or like not even of me, but like what I'm looking at as I'm like sitting in a park. And it's not framed, and it's not a piece of art, and it's a much more raw human experience.
All right. So is this something that people are consciously aware of? I mean, do people say like Snapshot because it's a more raw human experience that isn't filtered, and it affirms my idea that to be human is to be in the moment?
I don't think people sit down and think about it as that much. But I think what people do end up realizing is that when they want to communicate to their friends, and not tell their friends someone, but actually communicate their life and their experiences with the people that they know, they'll turn to Snapchat. And I think if you had them sit down and ask them why, I mean, I'm sure because their friends are on it is one, but everyone's friends on Facebook, and not a lot of people are sharing videos between each other on Facebook. So it's possibly a convenience thing, but that doesn't even make any sense. You can do that through the Facebook Messenger app. So, yes.
So is this some kind of, all right, we definitely have to talk about the generational thing, and we have to talk about is this some kind of backlash to other technologies?
So I have now I'll back up a little. So I grew up in the age of when Facebook was cool, and everyone wanted to post all the content up on Facebook so it could be around for all time. And they wanted to take pictures, and they wanted to have all this information. And there was definitely a backlash against it, where all of a sudden people stopped posting as much. Now, these days, younger people still post a ton, and especially on like Instagram. I think when you're younger and you're maybe more sociologically, that's not a word, I kind of combine like society and psychology together. but you're a little more vulnerable when you're trying to make friends in college and in high school, and there's more of a, social pecking order is important. I think that means people share a lot more in a more permanent way.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there is a backlash. I have a friend, and they used to do the whole Facebook thing, and then they basically exclusively switched to Snapchat because they wanted to tell their story piece by piece, and they wanted it to be. It's almost like it's a running TV show. So it's like a reality TV show versus a movie that's scripted.
In the olden days. Yeah. Before technology, you just used to hang out with people. I know this is
too. But it's hard to hang out with people all the time.
Yeah.
But so in some ways, right, because we have constant communication between everyone.
Yeah.
It's like you're hanging out with them all the time because they're always getting snaps about stuff.
Right. That's what I was going to say. To me, this almost sounds like the Snapchat is replacing, or maybe augmenting, but it's playing somewhat the role of just being in person with someone, as odd as that sounds, because you're not in person with them. But it's, like you said, that here's a picture, here's a video of my leg and I'm taking a piece of lint off. If I'm with you and you reach down and take a piece of lint off your pants leg, I'll notice it, and you don't have to take a video of it because I'm right there. But I do understand, Facebook, especially lately, seems to be really fond of going back in time in your photos and bringing it back up to your face and saying, hey, here's you 4 years ago. And you're like, and that's really can be very disturbing because, it's like, oh, look, there's that picture with that person that I, had the horrible breakup with and I don't ever want to see again in my life. And I forgot I even, I ever posted that to Facebook, and now I have to look at them again.
So I do think that it's almost like there's a quota of memories that people want to have. There's a certain amount of information that people want to store long term about their life. And in the past, this had always been true. People took videos, they took pictures of each other, they got portraits made way back in the day. They kept mementos and letters. There was a certain amount of stuff that people liked to keep for the past. But as technology made it way easier to keep every little waking moment of every little thing you did, it's like the pendulum swung too far. And so when people are looking back, they don't want to see every little thing that they did or every embarrassing thing. They just want memories. They kind of want to get rid of the useless stuff and just have kind of this core base of, memories and experiences that they want to remember and go back to and share. But every little moment, every picture that you ever send, it's like too much.
That's very interesting.
And
all right.
So because even people who use Snapchat,
yeah,
they still take pictures and they still record videos for long-term use.
They do?
Yes, they do. They and they say they have they have photo albums and they have collections that they save, but it's obviously less. It's like they limit it to a point and then they do everything else with Snapchat. And I will say another feature about Snapchat is if you really like something, you press a button and you can save it to your phone if you took the snap of it. So if you took a snap with all your friends and you're like, wow, I really want to save this forever, you just press a button and you can.
And do you think people do that a lot?
Yes, I do that pretty regularly. I would say maybe once every 20 snaps or 40 snaps.
So you're deciding what to have be transient, what to have be permanent.
Yes, for myself. So, do you have any? Because this is where the second part gets interesting, which is privacy, and being able to have control over your experiences and over your information. Because even though, yes, I can download it, it's only for things that I get, right? I can't download another Snapchat video someone sends me.
Only the ones you take.
Only the ones I take do I have that option before I send it. So even though you're using Snapchat, you are keeping complete control over what data of you is saved and what is not. So that's why I think the second part is a big part. And I think privacy and how companies use data and the fear that in 20 years, I don't want this embarrassing picture of me with my ex or me doing embarrassing
20 years. How about 6 months?
Yeah, sure. that I don't want this to be around so that other people can go stalk me. I don't need this.
It's amazing to me how much I could say other people, but I'm probably in there too.
Yeah.
Kind of ignore the this problem. I don't mean to bash on Facebook, but there is just a convenient example, and there are many other examples. But
many other
this problem that you don't own that. You upload that picture, they can do anything they want, and not just a picture, but all the data, everything you're clicking on. And it's like, I feel like if you said to someone, hey, do you think this is a good idea that everything you do is going to be recorded and stored and then used
in whatever way
someone wants, and constantly then marketing stuff to you and telling you what you should look at and deciding what should appear on your computer screen based on what you clicked. That if you kind of had either asked people that, away from the context, or asked them that a few years ago, I think most people would say, well, I wouldn't want that.
Right.
And yet it doesn't seem, I know it bothers people, but how much does it really, are people leaving Facebook in droves? Is it just because is that the bit of the what Facebook does for us outweighs that disadvantage? Is it because it crept up on us, it didn't happen that way initially, and it turned into that? Is it because there's no other alternative? Give us the stuff we want to do with a product like that doesn't have such heavy privacy issues. How come more people aren't saying, forget this?
Well, my feeling is that some people are, but people are inherently lazy, and they're just right. Like if they could choose between Facebook, and Facebook had just a simple button you press that, one, we get all your data and we can do anything we want with it, and two, actually you have all your data and we'll never use it for anything. And it's just a button you pushed. I bet you a lot of people would push the button. But
there isn't a button like that, is there?
It's complicated. And even if they've redone their privacy settings. And a lot of companies, they keep having privacy where in theory, if you went through it and actually did a great job, you could kind of get there. But it's complicated and it takes a long time. You really have to read and understand the privacy settings. And you also have to, go through the actions of learning about all the different programs and protocols. And you have to actually do it. And people aren't going to do that.
Are they making it that difficult on purpose?
No, maybe. I think they're trying to make it as easy as possible, but it's difficult. But it's almost like there's just not a good way. There's just not a good way to do it, essentially.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're making it difficult on purpose. I think they've very proactively tried to make it simpler. But I'm not sure that's successful. And even if it was, I'm not sure anyone would really trust it, because it's one thing for the company to say, oh, it's just these things, but then a hacker gets their hands on it, and well, now all your data's gone, right? So, or they change their policy or whatever it is. So I think people are starting to take the option when it takes the same amount of effort of having more control over their presence online. I don't think people will take extra steps. I think everyone they're like, Google has my search history. I guess they know everything there is to know about me. And that's kind of the end of it, because they really want, when they type something in, Google to remember what's going on and give them relevant information. So there are definitely going to be people on the outside who have stopped using Facebook because it's creepy, who don't have Google save their search history. There's people on the fringe, but I think for the majority of people, if there's an easy way to do it that makes them feel like they have better control, like just using Snapchat instead of Facebook Messenger,
right?
They'll do it.
So doesn't this mean that there's a huge business opportunity here for taking the apps and the technology that we love, but coming up with a version of it that is transient?
Yes, but it's complicated. So the first is I'll give you a couple examples, and to our audience, I bet you could think of many more. So the first is anonymous messaging. It's a feature that people want.
And what do you mean by anonymous messaging?
It's exactly what it sounds like. You put it on your phone. It connects to all the people around you that are literally in your geographical area, and then you can talk to people anonymously.
Whether I know them or not.
Correct. It's just based on your GPS signal. So Yik Yak, of course, is the one that's doing it. They're having all kinds of problems, because it turns out that when you have anonymous messaging and people get pissed, you get sued. And the laws are not exactly clear on what information they have to be able to turn over and not be able to turn over. And as we saw with the Apple case, when there's a situation where a company's trying to actually keep people's information private, there's going to be a lawsuit. So they're getting sued. They kind of try to fix things by giving people like profile names, but then that defeats the whole purpose. There's a bunch of, I happen to know, like high schoolers are using an app called Whisper. Probably never heard of that. It's got over 10 million downloads on the app.
I have heard of that.
You've heard of Whisper?
I'm not as out of touch.
I hadn't heard about it until last week. So
new technology.
You're clearly ahead of me.
I'm ahead of you.
I don't really understand it, but I'm not in high school.
But that's I guess a somewhat related question, but not exactly.
There have been people who have tried to make Facebook competitors. There was a social networking site that tried to do it, but we're like, we won't use your privacy. All your pictures will be yours. We won't use your privacy. Yeah. We'll respect your privacy. We won't use your information. All your pictures will be yours. But Facebook's Facebook. It has such a market edge. It's very, very difficult for any kind of site to break in on their stuff. And again, people they care if there's a better alternative.
Yeah,
but they're not going to actively. They don't care a lot.
I was really surprised, a year or so ago when it came out that Facebook was running experiments on people.
That was great.
And, Facebook is running these evil experiments. And it's like, you saw it in your Facebook feed. and then did any of us cancel our Facebook account?
It was probably two people. Two people did. But no, that's exactly it. So you need a competing service. So Facebook is in a great position because they have everyone's on Facebook, and that's just the way life is. When you talk stuff about email, things are starting to get interesting. I think people would think to switch if they had the ability, would switch to an email client that had end-to-end encryption if people really knew what was going on. But maybe it doesn't matter. So that's the privacy component of all of this.
Yeah.
And I think it does matter for some people. I use an app called Telegram, a messaging app, because it's open source and in theory more secure. And, then, for example, WhatsApp, which, and so, you can use end-to-end encryption. You can send, secret messages or messages that stick around. You just have a lot more options. And it's not owned by, evil corporation. And it's as good as a messaging app as anything else. So I think people will start to use that. You would think there'd be a bigger business opportunity. But I think at the end of the day, people just don't care. It's something people care a lot about, but it's not going to change their behavior.
But if you say that, then why did Snapchat become such a big thing so quickly?
Well, because it was easier and it was better. It's to send a picture to a select group of people very quickly.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing easier than Snapchat. So
it wasn't just the transients.
Hey, and you Miss Behavior Psychologist,
yes,
that sex sells. And having an app.
Yes, I do know that.
So Snapchat, of course, got its start because you could sext people.
Oh,
right?
Well, that
the pictures delete
everything.
After 10 seconds. So you can send people dirty pictures and then they automatically, right? And you don't have to worry about them saving your pictures. Or you send pictures of weed, things that you don't want to have saved.
Well, why didn't you mention that in the first place? That, of course. Well,
but that was its beginnings. But then people realized that. But then they started to trust it. Because they had, like if I send things here, they're not going to be exposed. It's and these days, the vast majority of snaps on Snapchat are not of drugs and sex, even though that's kind of in its early days what it kind of got popular as. I think in the same way that when Tinder started, it was like, people for people hooking up and like just like one night stands. And now, like, the vast majority of, like, people who date on Tinder, that's not what happens. It's just a normal dating site like any other dating site. But it got popularity because of it. I guess it was risque. So that's...
Well, that makes sense. I hadn't...
But it's part of a broader...
Two together.
So you just don't want people to look at what you're doing. And maybe part of it is too. For example, if you
don't want people to look at what you're doing, then
you don't want certain people to look at what you're doing. You want to have control, and you could do this on Facebook, but it's tough to set up, and no one does it. So, for example, I have a picture of like me taking shots, or me listening to some cool music or something. It's something that's about me as a person. Like, I don't want to send that to every single person I'm friends with on Facebook. I don't want my aunt to see, various things I'm doing. I only want to show this to 4 of my closest friends.
Yeah.
Easy to do on Snapchat. Difficult to do on Facebook. So.
Well, and people use, these tools in different ways. I mean, how many people do you have as friends on Facebook?
I think a little over 700, most of which are legacy people from high school and college, law school.
And I have like 23.
Yeah, well, because back when I was growing up, when you go to college or you go to work, you add everyone in the group. That's how you connect. That's how people. That's how you get to know people. So it's different that way.
But but I have like 12,000 on people following me on Twitter.
So Google Plus figured this all out, and Google Plus is an interesting example. Again, they saw a business opportunity,
but they haven't done well.
that's the point.
You mean you're talking about the circles?
Mm-hmm. They came up with a way where you could instantly talk to only those people. But they were competing against Facebook, and I don't think anyone trusted that it was only going to those people, and it stayed for forever, and then Google had your information. So was it really better?
I had a phone call with someone from Facebook a couple of years ago about this, and they said they were thinking about this whole circle thing. Because there's research. Robin Dunbar.
I thought Google Plus was a great idea.
Well, Robin Dunbar, we mentioned in our podcast on stories, because he's the one that had that quote that 65% of all conversations are stories. But he has done research on strong links and weak links. Do you know about this?
I do. Tell the audience, and then audience, I have some homework for you, and that's actually not an April Fool's joke. I actually do have some homework for you. But give us the information.
You got to mention that the reason you said April Fool's joke is because
it's currently April Fool's.
It's April 1st today.
Ta ha ha ta ha ha.
No, they may not know that it's April 1st, right?
It's true.
They
you would know when this was
to this on July 15th.
It is April 1st. Everything you read and hear is a lie. This whole podcast has actually been a joke.
It's not.
April Fools.
It's just that is not truth.
We didn't want this to be an April Fool's podcast because the third one, it's a little cheesy. Everyone's doing an April Fool's podcast. And most likely, you're not even going to be listening to it on the first.
Yeah, I didn't want to have
be listening to it on the second. So.
No, all of this is real. Okay, so Robin Dunbar.
Yes.
He's an anthropologist, by the way. So he originally studied animals. And all the way back in 1998, he published some material. He was studying different species of animals, and what he was studying was there a difference between, was there a relationship between brain size, specifically the neocortex, and the number of stable relationships in that species social group.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up with a formula for calculating the limit.
Do you know the formula?
I don't know that I know the exact formula. Do you know the exact formula?
No.
I don't. I'll have to look that. Now you got me curious. But what he found out, so then he extrapolated, he took the formula and he used it on humans. So he calculated that the ideal social group size for humans, or not ideal size, the limit, it's not the ideal size, the limit is 148. And then he rounded up to 150. Yeah, sure. And so what this means is that 150 people is the limit at which you can keep track of everybody. You know who they are. You recognize their face. You know their name. You have a personal relationship with them. And you also know how they are connected, if they are connected.
Right. You know how you know them. You know if they know they know other. That you know.
Yeah. So, and that's called a strong ties. And then if beyond that, if it gets beyond 150 for humans, then that becomes what he calls weak ties. Now, weak ties mean bad. You know how we usually think strong is good and weak is bad? And in this case, that's not true. He's not saying that weak is bad. Yeah, that's true. No, he's just talking about that it's a different kind of tie. It's relationships that don't require everyone to know everyone else. And so that's what he means by weak. And I had this whole conversation with this guy from Facebook about weak ties, strong ties, because essentially what Google's doing was they were allowing you to specify different groups, but also, this is a weak tie group and this is a strong tie group. Interestingly,
for instance, core group.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, if you want to get the best group to network with is your weak tie group.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Wait, say that again.
If you're looking for a job, let's say you're looking for employment, which I hope you're not, because you work with me. But if you were looking for a job, should you go to your strong tie group, your really strong, core group, less than 150 people that really know you see a lot, have a history with, or should you go to your weak tie group, the 1,500 people on your Facebook or LinkedIn that you kind of, if you met them on the street, you wouldn't even know who they were, right? But you are somehow connected to them that you could look up how. And it's much better to go to your weak tie group because usually it's a larger group, but that's not the only reason. It's because they are connected to people you don't know yet, and that's what you need. If you're looking for a job, you already know everybody in your strong tie group and what they're doing and whether they're connected. You want to go outside of that and get new ideas and new people and new companies. So weak tie groups are very important. But it's interesting to me because I think some people use Facebook, for instance, as a weak tie group, and some use it as a strong tie group. Mm-hmm. I use it as a strong tie group. You use it as a weak tie group.
Yeah. And then I think there's like and then it's your core group of friends, people who you spend 90% of your time interacting with, maybe 15 people.
Now, are those people, do you think, where does physical proximity come into this?
Well, I think it used to.
Do you think
I think it used to.
That's kind of gone out the window, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think physical proximity still matters. I think if you're far away and you don't see someone in person, they fade. Just because you don't have as much stuff to relate to, you don't have as many shared experiences.
Yes. Yeah. But by the way, with the Robin Dunbar idea, this traditionally in anthropology, a strong tie group meant you were in physical proximity.
Yeah, and that's not true. Well, what is physical proximity? And I'll give you a perfect example. I play video games quasi regularly with people from Europe, but I have another friend who plays much more often, and so it's almost because they're on Skype, you're seeing them, you're talking to them, so you're doing a common shared activity.
Is that physical proximity?
Is that basically the same as walking around together on the savannah?
We might have to change our definition of physical proximity.
Right. But I think it is very important that you're doing an activity together and you're talking about that activity as you're doing it, right? It's not like you're watching a movie together. You are talking and communicating and reacting and they're reacting from you and so it really is a shared experience.
All right, now you said we had homework.
Yes, I have homework. So audience, I want you to see if what we've talked about makes sense. Think about all the people in your life. Do you have a core group that is probably under 15 people? And you can think about who that is. What percentage of time do you spend with those 15? I'm going to bet it's over 90%.
Physical time or any
energy.
Time?
Energy, time, messages.
So messaging on Facebook or sending a Snapchat counts.
Yes. Interaction with. And I'm going to bet that over 90% is with those core group of people. Unless you're at work, because then you're doing work and so your time might be skewed. But even then, you're still probably only going to interact with, you probably have like your core group of friends and then your work people who are also your core work group. So but work gets weird because you're...
No, wait a minute. So what do you want them to do
you have to do work.
What do you want them to do for the homework?
I want them to see if they have a core group of friends and think about if they do and what that means about how their social lives work. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2.
Okay.
Do you have a strong group of people? Less than 150 people. If you think about them and you think about their lives and you can tell probably what they're doing, probably what they're up to, who they're dating, where they live, where they what they're doing for work, who they know and how you know them. It's probably under 150, but is it way less? Is it like 30? Or is it more? The next step, how many people do you know? How many Facebook friends do you know? How many LinkedIn contacts do you have? That's your weak group, right?
I don't know. I have a lot of LinkedIn.
Yeah,
oh yeah, weak group. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be your weak.
Yeah, that's
weak
your weak
ties.
group.
Yeah.
Weak ties. So do you find?
All right. Why do you want them to think? Yeah. Oh, so once they have written this all down.
You don't have to write it down. I just want them to muse on the idea.
All right.
Do you find that you prefer interacting with one group more than another? Are some people inherently better than others, even though there's no real rhyme or reason why they're in one group or the other, probably just because circumstances and mutual friends and just bonding over a certain time and space. Right? Do you actively dislike reaching out to people in your weak group? And
or your strong group.
Or your strong group even. And you only like talking to your core. And I'll give the perfect example. I'll give a couple of examples. Okay? You are I'm trying to think of you are in a restaurant. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're eating a bowl of soup. Maybe even making a bowl of ramen. At a counter. Looking out in a window. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Across the street, you see someone walk by who you know. Would you run out to the other side or call them immediately? Or run to the other side of the street and be like, "Oh, hey, this is so crazy. What are you doing here?" Would you do that if they were in your core group? Would you do that if they were in your strong group? Would you do that if they were in your weak group? Or would you even recognize them if they were in your weak group?
I think it would depend on how good the ramen was.
That's possible. And then that may change from person to person. But that's the homework. How much would you value each? For example, how much would I have to pay you to run out and have that social interaction for each? Because I bet if it's one of your close friends, you'll do it for free. I bet if it's someone you knew from high school, I'd have to pay you like $10.
It depends on.
So what are you up to these days? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
This depends on.
That's great.
On whether you're an introvert or an extrovert.
Somewhat, but not really.
Yeah.
I think it's equally bad. So if you're an introvert, you don't want to have those kind of social interactions with anyone. Yeah. If you're an extrovert, it's almost double bad. You'd rather have them with a stranger who you know nothing about than this person who you should know something about, but you actually don't.
Yeah.
And so that's awkward, and you feel like you should be good friends, but it doesn't really work, and then you're worried that they're worried, and they're like, "Why are you talking to me?" So I don't know.
All right, now let's back up.
That's my homework.
Okay. All right.
But let me just say, because of this, I actually started this a couple weeks ago. I'm going through Facebook. I have 700 and some friends on Facebook, and I'm sending them an individual message to each person, just asking what they're doing. I'm going through all my
700.
Yeah, each one. I'm still in the A's. It's taking forever. The idea is to reconnect and to not have people simply be a name on Facebook, but to have a connection with them in some way.
Really?
Yes. It's my kind of social experiment / Facebook quest.
Do you think you'll keep it up and make it all the way to the end?
Yes, but that's because I am a ridiculously persistent person, and once I put my mind to something, it just happens usually.
You do it.
Yeah.
All right, now let's back up. So you said you thought the Google Plus had a great idea with the groups.
Yeah.
But Google, I mean, and I know some people really love Google Plus, but personally, I forget to go in and look at Google Plus. I actually did not too long ago, and how many people did I have? Like thousands of people connected to me that I didn't really realize
you're a celeb,
I did.
So.
Oh, I'm a celeb. But so why do you think Google Plus has not taken off the way First of all, do you agree that it has not taken off the way Facebook and LinkedIn has taken off?
Yes, Google. Some Google exec would say I'm wrong, but it hasn't, and it hasn't because they're not Facebook. I think that's really I think that's the big reason.
But what does that mean?
There's Facebook. That's where everyone is.
Yeah.
The whole point of Facebook is that you can connect with anyone because everyone's on Facebook.
Yeah.
With Google Plus, what happens is because Facebook has an intrinsic value because it's almost like the little black book that everyone carried around for decades.
Yeah.
And so that's an intrinsic value that makes Facebook have value. And once you're on there, well, maybe you'll message people, your best friends, all the time on Facebook. But you can do that anywhere. Google Plus, it really only has value if you're using it as a communication platform for you and your groups of people, right? The idea being you can share things with some people and not others. You have your different little circles. And if not everyone in your circle is on Google Plus, you're not going to use it to communicate. And if you're not going to use it to communicate, there's no content. And if there's no content, why would you be on Google Plus?
Yeah.
So it's not Facebook. And I'm not saying I think they made some errors when they rolled it out, but I think just that's just a simple. They're 8 years too late. But I thought it was a good idea.
Let's go back to Snapchat.
Yes.
Let's take us back around. So this idea of liking things to be transient, and that if things are transient, then they're more human.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a generational thing?
Yes.
Meaning that because we don't necessarily have to get specific about ages here, but let's just say that you're in a younger generation and I'm in a slightly older generation. How's that? Was that vague enough? I like that. Let's just leave it right there. Don't say anything.
Perfect.
Okay. But do you think that I'm going to say, and boy, our listeners may not agree with me on this, but I'm going to say that the initial reaction for people in a somewhat older generation is to say, well, if I'm going to take a picture or video, or if I'm going to have any information, I want to be able to keep it.
Right.
And to not,
why would you throw that
away? Eventually they, after thinking about it, someone explains to them about, the advantages of it being transient. They might say, oh yeah, actually that's a good idea. And then get on board. But the initial reaction is, huh? Whereas for the people in a slightly younger generation, yours, as you said, it's not necessarily that they thought about it consciously or that they would have articulated it immediately, but there was this resonance to the idea that some methods of communication that are transient, that can be a very good thing,
right?
A desirable thing,
mm-hmm.
And that's because, and the generational difference in this be because you guys are kind of overwhelmed with all that because you always could store all this stuff online, or because
that's a good question. Maybe our level of exposure is so much higher. The average person, think of all the social messaging, recording, human sharing experience things they're on.
Yeah.
Right? Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, texting, phone calls, Telegram.
The younger you are, the more exposed you are.
Yes. Yeah. And there's like a trillion different apps. And not only that, it's not just the sending out, but you're also receiving.
Yeah.
Constantly receiving.
Yeah. So okay, that makes sense. So that and the older you get, again, these are generalities that would not hold for some specific people, but in general, the older you get, even if you might be on a lot. I'm on a lot on all these social media, but I'm not receiving and sending near as much.
The volume.
Yeah.
I send.
Yep.
I probably send 100 messages a day. I receive personally, I probably receive about 5 snaps. And then, do you know the difference between snaps and snap stories? For example, when someone sends a Snapchat, you can put it kind of to like tell your story, and any of your friends can view it for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas you can send an individual Snapchat to a specific person that once they watch it, it disappears. So I get, maybe 5 individual snaps and then, 30 or 40 snap stories every day. So it's a never-ending flow of content. Again, like I said, I send 100 messages. I'm constantly on the phone, Skype, talking to people. So the amount of my life that is not private, that is not a quiet, secluded moment, that is observed by other people is just really high. And I think sometimes people just want to be left alone, especially if you're for example, if you're a girl. Everything you post on Snapchat, there's the creepers, quote unquote, who are just creeping on everything you post, and you don't want to be ogled. You want to be private. You want to be in your room by yourself, and I think that's part of it. Now the other part is
go ahead.
I think there's also just a generational difference between how you view things. So there's a podcast I listen to called the Tony Kornheiser Show. And if you didn't know, Tony Kornheiser, he's on PTI. He's the old disgruntled Jew from New York, who's rich and knows he's rich and kind of is generally just a grumpy grandpa all the time. His son has a Fitbit, right? And he uses his Fitbit to track his steps, track his activity, so he can walk more, be more active. And as Tony famously says, if you want to walk more, walk more. Why do you need a thing on your wrist to tell you to walk more? Just go do it. And so the idea of, if you want to be social with people, just go be social with them. Invite them over for wine or whatever, not millennials do. So why do you need to, the idea that you need to record every single waking moment of your life and share it with your friends at all times, which is a need and desire that us millennials constantly feel. Like whenever we do anything or eat any meal or play with any pets, we must share this experience with everyone else, or we feel incomplete.
Well, I think that needs to be. I'm writing that down right now. Yeah. I'm going to type it.
And I don't think that's a need and desire that older generations have, because if you want to be social, just go be social. And if you don't want to be social, don't be social. So
can you hear me typing?
Very, very softly. Very softly. So
I'm typing this in.
Right. So if you want, so the idea that that for an older generation person, this is where I think the line is, that for an older generation, if you take a picture, you're taking it to remember the memory. That's why you're taking the picture. Yes. You're not doing it because of some sort of intrinsic need to feel belonged, and you have to share it with all your friends to prove that you're having fun and also better than them at the same time. Right. But also because they send you stuff and you want to show them you're there. Right? There's this whole, right? You take a picture, you want to share it with your friends.
Not for validation.
And so I think that's the line.
That's going to be a great podcast when we do that one.
Yeah.
That'll be really interesting.
Oh my God. I've talked a lot this podcast. I've just been rolling.
Yeah, you have. This is good. I usually do a lot of the talking, and I got a break. But I think you have, I think you did a good job of answering my question, which was,
do you feel
what
enlightened?
Is the appeal? I do. I feel like I learned a lot about, the transience issue.
Now,
that was helpful.
I should issue a disclaimer. I may just be weird. And every single other person who uses Snapchat is like, what are you talking about? This doesn't describe my life at all. But I know there's some weirdos out there who agree with me. And I know who you are. And I know you think the same way I do.
So if there are weirdos out there, email Guthrie.
Yeah, Guthrie the Team W. I hope I'm right. I hope the audience was like, yes, that sounds right. And the older people who have never used Snapchat are like, I have no idea what's going on right now.
Well, they can go check out Snapchat.
They can go check out. Well, yes. I'd actually bet a lot of people would be surprised if you're not on Snapchat. I bet you if you go on, you'll be surprised of how many people do have Snapchat accounts. But
yeah,
that's. We didn't. And if you're the owner of an app that's just like Snapchat except not Snapchat, I'm very sorry. There are many. I actually wanted to get to a lot more other tools of end-to-end encryption and things that delete themselves. And there again, like for example, Telegram has the same situation where you can send a message and have it automatically delete after a set period. But we just ran out of time. And
I'm writing it down as part 2. I typed it in. I typed in a note about that. Yeah. Well, great. Hey, so, if I come up with more questions, I'm definitely I know who to go to.
So do you think that my explanation that it was like a metaphysical answer, do you think that actually had some sort of water and weight and bearing?
I think it's interesting. Okay. I have to think about it some more. It wasn't necessarily
a yes. I didn't know if I was stretching a little too far with that.
It might be the meme of the century. But I'm going to have to think.
So the Nobel Committee, you can send my Nobel Peace Prize invitation.
Wait a minute. You're going to be in Sweden.
Oh, yes, that's true.
And
yes.
that's Sweden, isn't that where the Nobel Peace Prize comes from?
Could be Norway. I really apologize to all of my Scandinavian friends for not knowing where I know the Nobel Prize came about because of the guy because he invented dynamite and then felt really bad about things.
You know what? We should stop before we get into more trouble.
Okay. Yeah, but all right. Do you have any other questions?
No, well, I do, but I'm going to save them for future. Put them in Asana on my list and save them for future podcasts.
All right, then we'll put that one in the books. Our email address, if you'd like to yell at me about how wrong I am about Snapchat. And why you actually use it is info@theteamw.com. Of course, you can please, if you listen to this podcast through any kind of podcast service, give us some ratings, give us a positive review. We're new and we're climbing up the ranks. Just so we know, this is our 3rd podcast, but we're already top 100 in the top tech podcasts according to iTunes. So we've had some really nice traffic. We're top. I think we're almost top 10 in the technology gadgets section.
Really?
For our friends who are on Stitcher,
take a Snapchat of that.
If you know people who are on Stitcher, we are now on the Stitcher podcast page. So theoretically, you can get us there. But yeah, if you give us some positive reviews, that'll help the popularity even more. You can also, Susan, your Twitter handle again.
The Brain Lady.
That's The Brain Lady. Again, we're on Facebook and Google Plus as the Team W. Also YouTube.
Not very often.
We Hootsuite all of our stuff there. It's fine. And then LinkedIn, all the social media networks. And finally, our website is theteamw.com. And if you want to go check out some of the courses we have, go check out courses.theteamw.com. So with all that plugged and out of the way, I will probably say good luck in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can do a podcast before we jettison off to Sweden. If not, we have a couple in the bank. So we'll keep a podcast coming.
We might do one from Sweden, depending on how jet lagged I am.
Hopefully we can bring our mic and do one in person together from Sweden.
That'd be fun.
So that would be a lot of fun. So thank you so much, Susan.
Thanks.